What is going on, everyone? My name is NZ Shade, and welcome to my analysis of combat in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, in my last video, I broke down some of the games that influenced Baldur's Gate 3, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the mechanics themselves. Now, clearly, I don't have time to focus on everything in the game. There's tons of stuff here, and that would take forever. So, I want to talk specifically about the stuff that is new. The stuff that we haven't seen in a ton of other games, and will make Baldur's Gate 3 unique. So, lately, I've been trying to figure out what these mechanics are. What does this game have that is really going to shake things up? I've considered a whole lot of options. I thought about the various spells and abilities. I thought about the implementation of the 5th edition rule set. But the thing I keep coming back to are these 8 little buttons in the bottom left of the screen. 8 little abilities that every character has access to that I think are really going to shape the way we play the game. So these abilities are jump, dip, push, sneak, throw, dash, knock unconscious, and help. And as I play through the fights in the game, I'm constantly considering these options. They give me tons of flexibility for all sorts of things like movement, tactics, and role-playing. And so in this video, I want to go through each one and talk about the way it impacts the game. Let's start with jump. This is an interesting mechanic because it's such a staple in other genres, but rarely ever seen in CRPGs. There are entire games built around jumping, so it should come as no surprise that this mechanic feels really natural in a video game setting. Jumping gives you another option for moving around the battlefield, and having this extra choice gives movement a lot more depth. Both running and jumping have advantages and disadvantages, and deciding whether you should run or jump is usually an interesting choice. Jumping allows you to reach higher platforms, get over obstacles, and avoid attacks of opportunity, which are all quite useful in many situations. However, you do pay a price for this. Jumping uses your bonus action for the turn, and doesn't let you stop along the way. This trade-off feels incredibly balanced, and almost every turn, whether you should run or jump is an important decision. Next, let's talk about dash. This isn't the next ability on your hotbar, but dash and jump are your 2 main movement abilities, so I want to talk about them together. Much like jumping, dashing gives you additional mobility at a cost. You'll be able to run twice as far as normal, but this will be your main action for the turn. This means that you won't be able to attack or cast a spell. Dashing is great for getting out of tough situations, or setting up your position for future turns, but you'll need to consider whether this is worth not being able to attack. It's a bigger commitment than jumping, but the burst of speed is so huge you might decide it's worth it. Now that we've gone over movement abilities, let's talk about the skills that reward you for good movement and positioning. These are dip, push, and help. Dip allows you to coat your weapon in an environmental hazard to add damage of that type to your attacks. So, for example, you can dip your sword in a patch of burning earth to deal extra fire damage. What I love about this mechanic is that it rewards you for being aware of your environment and making use of your mobility to reach these hazards. A game with such a large focus on mobility wouldn't make much sense if there were no advantages to be gained from it, and this provides that incentive. Getting a dipped weapon massively increases your damage output, so it may be worth it to jump or dash your way to a hazard to get this buff. Then we have push. This ability allows you to shove an enemy or object, causing it to fly through the air along a specific trajectory. There are tons of uses for this, such as pushing an enemy off a ledge, pushing an enemy into a hazard, and pushing a barrel towards your foe so you can blow it up. Much like dip, push requires you to be at the right place at the right time, but if you can use your movement to find these opportunities, you can make some really high impact plays. The last positioning based ability is help. This ability allows you to give your allies a helping hand, removing status effects such as sleeping, prone, and downed. This ability is great because it forces you to think about your party's positioning as a whole, not just your individual characters. What would happen if your rogue got knocked out far behind enemy lines? Would anyone be able to help him up? This ability provides a great counterbalance to push, which encourages you to make big moves away from your team. It forces you to weigh the risks of getting too spread out, even though it might be tempting. Still, you might be able to get away with it if your squad is ready to run in for the quick save, giving us yet another opportunity to flex our movement. The last three abilities are harder to put into a category, but still continue the theme of adding depth and options to combat. These are Sneak, Throw, and Knock Unconscious. Let's start with Sneak. This is a common ability in CRPGs, but by making it an official action, you're able to use it in a far wider range of situations. In most games, sneaking is something you can only start outside of combat, and once you're found, there's nothing you can do. In Baldur's Gate 3, attempting to sneak is a standard ability that costs a bonus action. This means that you can start sneaking in the middle of a combat encounter, assuming you're out of sight. This allows you to move in and out of the action, retreating to the shadows before jumping back in with a surprise attack. By making it an official action, with a specific cost and well-defined rules, sneaking becomes a well-integrated part of combat. Throw is similar to Sneak. It's a common mechanic in many games, but is defined far better here. While many games allow you to throw specific throwing items, Baldur's Gate 3 allows you to throw any item. On top of the baubles and grenades that are designed to be thrown, you can throw any weapon to deal damage to an enemy. This is a great option for characters who can't use other ranged weapons like bows. You can also throw gear from one character to another. This is probably the least common of the three uses, but it can still help out in niche situations. You're also able to throw other characters, allies and enemies alike. This is a great option when a push doesn't quite do the trick. And finally, we have Knock Unconscious. This is the ability I use the least, but is still fantastic for role-playing situations. It lets you make an attack that will knock your foe unconscious instead of killing them. Maybe you need to keep someone alive, or maybe you just want to spare someone's life. Knock Unconscious lets you interact with enemies in a nuanced way that gives you an alternative to gutting everyone that stands before you. I think this ability opens up a lot of opportunities for strong writing and quest design. Since the ability to subdue an enemy is baked right into the mechanics, quests and branching narratives can easily take advantage of this. These skills work together to lay the foundation of the game's combat and tactics. Each one can stand on its own as a well-designed ability, but they really start to shine when viewed as a whole. These 8 mechanics encourage you to play in an interesting way, but still give you an incredible amount of freedom to approach each encounter. You might push someone off a ledge before your ally runs over to knock them out with the hilt of their sword. You might dash through a group of enemies to help your friend recover from a bad fall, or you might jump over a wall to get out of sight before blending into the shadows. There are hundreds of ways to combine these abilities, and each time I play, I find something I hadn't seen before. All based on a system that's available to every character at level 1. It can be a bit overwhelming at first, but once you get past that, you'll find a combat system that feels almost limitless. Thanks for watching.